trying to get you to do is to break up all of the portions of the application process into smaller batches so that it's not so overwhelming. Usually what happens with students is because they don't want to deal with it, they'll push it off and they'll push it off and push it off. And then it's November and they're like, oh my God, everything's due in a month and I haven't done anything. And they'll come to us and they go, I don't even know what schools I want to apply to. So in this first part, what we want to do is really focus in on some like manageable items that you can do this summer that'll put you in a really good spot when it comes back to fall, when you will hopefully be able to see Ebony and I in person and work a little bit more closely on your applications. The first step is honestly going to be one of the longest. So usually people want to jump right into getting their application materials ready to go. And that's not the best case scenario. So we usually end up doing a lot of backtracking if that happens. So the first thing we really want you to start looking into is what types of programs or schools are you interested in going to? Obviously starting that off by thinking of like what kind of degree are you going to be seeking, and some things that you want to think about when you're looking at schools. When you get to the master's level, particularly if you're going into a STEM field, it's going to become a lot more research based. And what that means is that a lot of times you will receive an assistantship or a stipend of some sort to be able to go to that institution, conduct research. Usually you're going to be conducting as part of a team, so a PI that's already there, but then potentially down the road you can start investing in your own research as well. And so looking at what types of research is already being conducted at that school is really important. Say you want to do something that's super specific in the field of botany, right? You want to make sure that the school that you're going to has somebody who's doing that super specific research, because most likely they're going to end up being your mentor throughout your process. So it's really important. That helps you narrow down kind of the mass loads of schools that are out there for people to apply to. So looking and seeing like what's already being done at that institution or the areas that they specialize in, that can help you start to narrow the field a bit and helps you be a little bit more specific during your application process as well. Other thing you want to pay attention to are what are their graduate outcomes. So just like we do here at Earlham, once you guys graduate, we're trying to track that information. So we look like, okay, where are our graduates 6 months out? Where are they a year out? Ideally, they're employed or in a graduate program, and that speaks well of our services. So you want to make sure that the grad school you're going to has high outcome numbers, meaning they're reporting that 90% of our graduates are in the field within 6 months of their application phase. And that's really, really important because you want to make sure that the end goal of this is usually to get a job. The other type of things to really consider about is that grad school can be incredibly expensive if you're not smart about it. There are plenty of funds out there to be able to assist you with this process. I already mentioned assistantships. Some of these are partial, meaning they might just cover your tuition. Others are going to be a full, which a stipend, and usually that could mean the cost of tuition, books. It could even include insurance, housing, and sometimes there's a food stipend. So there's a lot of different options out there. So it's important for you to make sure that you are going in this early to kind of go after some of those more competitive spots, which means less money out of your pocket. We really don't want you to have to pay out of pocket for graduate school. It can be very expensive, and your loan options are going to diminish significantly as they were in undergrad. So there's not as many options for graduate school funding. As far as receiving government aid, usually it's just a loan. So we want to make sure that you're getting funds from that institution. Other thing to really start thinking about is your program competitiveness. Now, you know yourself as a student. So if you look at yourself and you go, hey, I'm really passionate about this subject, I really want to continue study, but like maybe my GPA isn't the best, right? Maybe I had a rough semester here or there, and so maybe I'm at like a 3.0. I wish it were higher. It's not the end of the world. There are grad programs out there for you. You just have to make sure that you're targeting the right type of program. Going for tier 1 schools that, their average GPA is a 3.89 or 3.9 or 4.0 or whatever it may be, probably isn't in your best bet. So make sure you're playing within your field. And that'll increase your odds of getting into a program and getting to a program that's going to hopefully be able to support you as well. Another one that we want to bring up is location. When you get to the graduate graduate school level, a lot of times you might see students who are going a little bit closer to home. And a lot of times that's strictly for financial reasons. Like we said, if you don't get a full assistantship and you're paying a lot out of pocket, living at home during grad school is really cost friendly. I know it's not the ideal answer for a lot of students. They don't want to go back home, but most likely it's only going to be a year or two. And if you're saving money in the long run and you're not having to build up some debt, that might be in your best interest. Other students know that they strictly might be like, hey, I went to Indiana for undergrad. I'm ready to get out of here. I'm going to go to the East Coast or something like that. And so students have various reasons for picking different locations. So we want to throw that on there as well. Okay. And so after we are in with looking at some of the schools, one of the things that you want to do is making sure that you are making connections to professionals at that school. The first level is really contacting whoever the graduate coordinator is. Most programs are going to have their own graduate coordinator. Sometimes this is a person that is teaching faculty within the program, but otherwise it's usually an admin, so they'll be able to answer a lot of your basic questions about the application process. Second level, which is really important, maybe even more important, is to make sure that you are getting in contact with someone who is teaching within the department. And ideally, this would be someone who would be able to either be a mentor or maybe they would be an advisor. And this is important because more and more programs, particularly those that are competitive, meaning they have small numbers of seats available for applicants, they will actually require you to have already identified a research advisor before you even apply. And this is the reason why. So if they're going to offer you, something like a full funded GA position, the faculty member you're going to be working with really closely wants to already know you a little bit. So it's really important at this stage, this early on, to start making some of those connections. And so what this is simply, your reach out, making sure that you're communicating, send them an email that's targeted. We've got some resources for you, which we'll share, that kind of help you craft how to do that, especially understanding that, with COVID, we are likely going to be doing things remotely. So, making sure that we are having some professional emails going out in lieu of being able to do in-person communication is just as important. Okay, so how are we going to do this? I mentioned that you want to make sure that you're sending an initial email outreach. You want to make sure that this message is brief. We want to make sure that we're communicating the information in a very concise way. And the reason why is that these people are very busy, right? And it is the summer months. So we also want to understand that they may not be checking their email as often. So make sure that you're being very clear with your asks. Identify who you are, make sure that you're attaching your CV and your unofficial transcript right from the start, so that way they can read the brief email from you, they can look at some of your academic backgrounds and decide, okay, is this a student that seems capable that I want to move forward with and perhaps send a response, or is this someone that doesn't seem like a good fit right from that front? And this can be really intimidating because we understand that this is like the first step of rejection, but also it is totally normal for you to not hear back from a variety of professors. And again, this could simply just because of timing. A lot of faculty are off during the summer, so don't take it too hard. Don't be like refreshing your button every 6 seconds and panicking if you're not hearing back. It's okay, but we still want to go through this process because you never know who's going to read that email. There's been instances where faculty have actually, forwarded an email they got from a student that maybe they don't have a spot for, but they'll do some of the networking for you. They might be like, hey, I don't have a spot on my research team right now, but so-and-so it does have one, and I think you guys might be a great fit, and they'll just forward it for you. So whatever you can do to really personalize these emails and make that connection is really going to help. State why you're writing. Obviously, what program are you interested in? Faculty might teach in different programs, so you want to make sure you're very clear with what you're doing. Why you're interested in it. So very quickly, here are my goals, here are what I want to do with it. If you have any research experience, you want to, again, really quickly be able to talk about that. That should also appear very clearly in your CV. And then any other analytical skills that might be applicable to the lab that they're working in. If you have funding, it's always a good idea to be able to mention this up front. It might increase your chances of knowing like, hey, they don't have a lot of money left to give out. But if you say, hey, I have a scholarship from so-and-so already, they might perk up their ears a little bit more. So when I'm talking about being specific in this email, you absolutely do not want to send a blanket email to a bunch of faculty members that is generic and clearly a form. Same as we do with cover letters. It's a big no-no for me. If you're sending out the same cover letter to everybody and it's not specific, people can tell that right away. And so when they see that, they're not going to read it. Okay, so make sure you're taking the time, personalize it. How do you do that, right? So if you're interested in this person's research because it aligns with your goals, how do you know that? Check out some of their most published works. What are they doing recently? Read a couple of their articles. Even kind of checking out their website and seeing what they've been up to lately. All those little details count. And maybe, sometimes this stage can be a little bit hard, and that's okay. Like, we're here to help if you can't identify some solid details for that, but usually it's just a couple of key facts that you can put in there to show that I've done a little bit of homework. I am taking it to the next level of interest. And then the last thing you want to do is your ask, right? Why are we doing this? Why am I communicating with you? And what this is you're trying to put that out there to continue the relationship, because this is a relationship building. It's not like a one-shot done, like, hey, I want to go to your grad school. Can you fund me? Yes or no? What you want to do in this instance is you want to try and keep the conversation going. So asking to set up a phone call or a video conference at their leisure, and maybe drop some questions in there about what you are interested in learning about, or questions about their research or something like that.
So many schools are going to require you to take standardized tests for admissions. And this is something that you should be thinking about right now in terms of when you think you might want to take them, because you want to schedule them in time to give yourself an opportunity to retake the exam that you need to. One thing that makes it easy for a graduate school to right off the bat kind of dismiss your application is if your GRE test scores are not coming in at the application deadline. That may be something that may be a standard that's a little bit let go right now in times of COVID. Still want to give yourself the chance to retake the GRE or the GMAT or whatever standardized test that you need to take. And you also want to give enough time for them to actually receive those scores. So start thinking about now when you want to take your tests, and also have a backup date in the case that you are not happy with your scores. The standardized tests are a tool that can help you in your application process, especially if you're a student who's not too excited about your GPA. Your standardized test scores can really speak for you and speak to the fact that you are a diligent worker and you are someone who takes the application and the program seriously.
Is you're going to click on grad school prep, and then it says grad school exam. And I believe you have 3 different versions of the GRE practice test. One thing that's really important to note is, for whatever reason, this service at the end, it does not email you your composite scores at all, which is frustrating. So make sure when you get them, you jot them down, because you're going to want to see those to help judge and gauge where you're at. I usually suggest that students take a test early on in the process so that they know how far do they need to go. And then also to gauge, like a month later, have I improved? Are my study tactics working? And if they're not, we're going to have to switch it up. So it's a good idea. You can also just search free GRE tests to be able to find resources. They are out there. And a lot of students will purchase GRE prep books, and those usually will come with some full-length tests as well. So feel free to do that. But there's free resources out there as well. When I took the GRE years ago, I used free resources because I was not paying that and it was expensive. And nowadays there's tons of apps that are out there, which are really great. Some of the ones that I have listed here are the most common. A couple of them are free. Some of them you have to do a one-time payment. And they tend to be a little bit lower cost than doing the full-fledged textbook. And the nice thing about that is if you're on the go, you can just pull it up on your phone and do some quick studies, which is really helpful to just get that repetition down. So there's Manhattan Prep GRE, Ready for GRE, Pocket GRE Math, Prep Game, which makes it like a game, which is more fun. And then Magoosh GRE Prep has some really nice reviews as well. And so that's kind of the best way. Once you take that first practice test, you can usually analyze your areas that you're scoring weaker on so that you know where to focus. So for example, if you're not really good in the analytical skills section, maybe that's the one that you're gonna go heavy and hard for to make sure that you can get that section score up. And that is kind of really helpful. The other thing that I do want to note during this is that half the battle of taking the GRE is being able to sit in a structured environment and focus for that length of time. So when you're doing these practice tests, it's really important for you to test all the way through a couple of times, because I will tell you, as someone who is not used to having to sit for some hours taking a test, our brains just aren't used to it, right? When was the last time you had to do that? I mean, maybe one of your own professors was being really evil, but for the most part, we're kind of out of that mode. So really getting used to just tuning your brain in and focusing for that amount of time is just as important as studying the content.
Listed here are a few additional resources that will really help you get prepared for the graduate school application. The Gentle Guide for Applying to Graduate Schools will take you through the whole situation, the whole application process, and then 7 critical steps to find the right graduate school, applying to graduate school, tips, timelines, and tools of the trade. And then you can also use Jessie and I as your career coaches as a resource on campus or through email or through Zoom session, even now while we're not on campus, even now while it's the summer. You can shoot us an email or you can schedule an appointment on Handshake.
With it being summer hours, we're probably a little bit better to answer just a direct email, because I know I don't have open hours right now just because it's summer schedule. So feel free to shoot me an email.
You really want to get into grad school, so make sure you get in contact with us. If you can't get in contact with us through Handshake, send us emails. We don't mind being badgered in our emails. Hey, I need you, because we want to help you too. So make that first step and connect with us, and we'd love to help. So we will be following up with this Zoom session in mid-July for part 2 of this series. We'll be going over the application itself, your personal statement, letters of recommendation, and such. Okay.
Just to kind of recap some quick goals from this session. And again, don't jump ahead to the next part because you think like those are going to take the longest. They don't. So what we're hoping to get from you between now and mid-July is identify at least 10 schools that are of interest and programs that are of interest. That does not mean you have to apply to all of them. That gets expensive, but having a solid 10 schools is a good start. So we want you to have 10 schools. One slide that got lost in translation somewhere is keep a spreadsheet, okay? It is really important as you're doing these initial research stages to be able to quickly catalog different categories that are important to you. So such things as cost, location, what are the application requirements? Are there any prerequisites? Some programs will have classes that they are saying like, hey, you have had to have taken these courses in order to get into our program. So this is the point where we go, reality check, have I taken these, yes or no? If you haven't, and it's a program that you really want to get into, maybe there's a course over the summer we can get you into. Maybe that means that, you know, you take this gap year to complete those prerequisites. There's all kinds of things, but it's important to kind of identify this stuff right away. Another really crucial thing that you want to pay attention to is the deadline. So I will usually tell people to please organize that spreadsheet according to due date. And what that does is that when Ebony and I come time to work with you on the actual applications themselves, it helps us all keep kind of track. So we might work with, 10, 20 students who are all in the same process. And it's really easy for me, at least, to be like, I don't remember what we're doing. Hold on, let me refrain. So having a clear spreadsheet with the programs, the deadlines, and all the things you need help us stay just as organized as you are. So that keeps us all on track. A lot of times I'll put in there too, like, if the personal statement prompt is available ready on their website, I'll throw that on there. And again, this just helps us in the next stage. So step one, we're trying to get that list of at least 10 schools that we might be interested into. Step two is fill out a spreadsheet. If you guys want a template, I can send that around after this. It's a very simple one, but you can feel free to use it or expand on it. And then our final thing is the GRE prep. So this is going to take a lot of time. So making sure that you can dedicate some time to studying for the GRE, taking some practice tests is really important. And these kind of three things, believe it or not, are going to be the most crucial to getting done this summer. It will get you in really good shape in the fall. So even if you don't attend our part 2 in July, but if you come to me early in the fall and you've already done these steps, you're still in good shape. I'm not going to have a panic attack. And you're going to really thank yourself for not having to put yourself through all of this stress while you're trying to navigate your coursework.
Another thing to re-emphasize about the spreadsheet and deadlines, a lot of schools and programs will have multiple deadlines, priority and then regular deadlines. The faster that you apply and the earlier that you apply, the earlier that you may get a response and know if you got accepted or not, and the faster that you can apply for those assistantships and those resources for money before everybody else. So think about that as well.
Are we ready to answer some of the questions?
I think so.
Okay, so Cynthia asked, do MBA programs generally have research programs like other master's programs? So the answer is yes, they can. A lot of the time, Cynthia, these will be more project-based. So they're going to be looking at like your community development. Have there been any significant things that you have done? Have you done business plans, business modeling, that kind of thing? So being able to show some evidence of those things is going to be really strong for you. And so in addition, I know I talked heavily on research, sorry, STEM, but in addition to the research positions, there's also graduate assistantships. And usually what happens with these is those grad students will either work on campus as I'm losing my train of a grad assistant, so meaning that they are in the classroom with a professor. Sometimes they might actually teach at a larger institution. They might be tutoring, they'll be TAing. So there's a lot of different things that you'll be doing besides research, and evidently that is one of the big areas. But yes, there's absolutely going to be projects in an MBA program. Let it answer the question. And then let's see, Cynthia, you also asked about the practice tests. Hopefully that resources for international students. Okay. So are you interested in schools in the United States or internationally in the US? Okay, awesome. So depending on the type of area that you want to go into, there are certainly programs that are going to be a little bit more international friendly than others. It is harder, I'm going to be straight up, it is harder for an international student in STEM to be able to receive funding than a US student. That does not mean, absolutely does not mean that they are not out there. I have worked with several students who are international students, one of which within the last 2 years got fully funded to a PhD program. So it's out there. You have to work a little bit harder. In those cases, anything that you can do to really set yourself apart and have a solid 110% application is going to help you. But I will absolutely, the international students, it's really, you know, one of those things where we'll work one-on-one to pull like what's going to be the best fit for you. And we'll also look at schools who have accepted international students in the past as well. But yes, there is funding out there for them too.
I also want to let you guys know that I am putting in the chat, in case anybody is interested, a guide to grad school in geosciences. It's an article that will help students who are wanting to go to grad school for the geosciences. Interesting read, you should check it out.
Okay, so we had a question about scheduling GRE tests.
Mm-hmm.
So you are going to go, let me throw the link in there. Okay, so ETS is the system that administers the GRE. You will need to create an account. And let's get in there. Oh, yes. Jesse, good question. Hold on, I'm jumping ahead of myself. And chat. All right, so I'm going to throw the link in here for being able to. So this will take you to the ETS website, which is where you will find all things scheduling for GRE. So usually there's two different testing options. There's like a paper option, and then there's a computer-based option where everything is going to be on a computer. Just as you did if you took the SATs and the ACTs, it's very strict when you go in. So like you can't have your cell phone, things like that. So just kind of be aware it's a very daunting situation when you go in and they're very serious. But you can schedule your test date through those services. The online tests tend to be more readily available, meaning there's more options to be able to do that, but some people prefer the other. Okay, so we did have a question. Are there application fee waivers? Does McNair help? Yes. Okay, so McNair traditionally does set aside some funds to be able to help you with a number of your application fees. They may even have fees to help you cover some of the costs of the GRE. But also know that most programs they will have fee waivers available based on your income level. So you might have to submit your tax documentation showing where your family's income level is at, but they will waive the application fee. And I think the same thing for the GRE, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a second, but I'm pretty sure that there is a fee waiver available for that as well. Just know that you have to get those submitted earlier, because it's kind of one of those things where they have a pool of money, and once it's gone for any given year, they may not be able to do any additional ones. So I would get on that. That's probably another really good thing as you're looking at these schools and building out your spreadsheet, is to make note of, okay, who has a fee waiver? What do I need to do? When does it need to be submitted? More in a sense of timeline. Okay, this is something else to consider. Based on your area of interest, your timeline looks a little different. So traditionally, now that I'm going to make a blanket statement, traditionally you're going to see the majority of graduate schools deadlines be in November and December. And then a later date, you might even have some in April. Those tend to be programs that are not as competitive and have less funding. The earlier deadline usually is associated with funding. That means like, okay, if we have a November, December one, they probably have a very competitive program, but that program probably comes with more money. Certain programs, certain areas have earlier deadlines than that. So for example, if someone is interested in being a physical therapist, that deadline is usually in October, which seems incredibly early considering like you're really only kicking back into gear in September. So just be aware of that. If you have a specific field of interest, you can throw it in the comments here and we'll try to kind of delegate general timelines for that. But like I said, most likely they're going to be a November, December timeline. You'll see that the application timelines, they can be kind of trickled out too. It doesn't mean they're all going to be. I just mean like the general clustering of a lot of programs, that just tends to be the timeline for. But that doesn't mean you won't have like a February 1st deadline thrown in them. Usually what at least I do, I think Ebony does the same thing too, is once we get past the next stage and we really start working on applications, what we'll do is we'll look at your 2 applications, 1 or 2 that are due first, and we'll start working on those pieces together. And then we'll move down the line, again, trying to break this up as much as possible, and also making sure that your pieces are targeted to the schools. So Fletcher asked, coming from a small liberal arts school, which we are, how do you make your application more competitive against bigger schools? Earlham students do really well in grad school, really well. That's why we have so many students going on to graduate programs after Earlham. And I think the reason is that while you're at Earlham, although we may be a tiny school that maybe no one has heard of, the things that you guys get to do and how involved you are speaks numbers. So, and again, I'm going to revert to STEM example, sorry. But when I'm working with my seniors on their CV, okay, they will have on that CV 3 or 4 professional experiences already under their belt when they go to apply to something. And when you're looking at institutions and students coming out of institutions, they may have 1 internship, right? The rest is like stuff that they've done in the coursework. So that kind of competitive edge really sets you apart. Our academics at Earlham are also still really incredibly well known. That's what we're known for, and schools do know that. So I think that one, we have a strong recognition, for academics. Two, really take advantage of every single opportunity that you can, because the more experiences you have, the easier it makes our jobs, because you've done so many things, you have so much experience already, even though you've just been going through undergrad. And I think the third thing is also, like, because you're in a small school, you know how to navigate resources and navigate relationships, which maybe students at a larger institution do not know. Okay. So when it comes to really connecting with someone who's going to be your advisor or somebody who's a program head, you will have an easier time, hopefully, because we've prepared you for that, or because Ebony and I have coached you through what that's going to look like. So I definitely think that there are some really good strengths, because you want to think about also, grad programs tend to be smaller than the undergrad population, right? So they're looking for like cream of the crop students. And Earlham, we have that kind of like small designation. You guys are used to like that cohort building. So I do think that those are all things that speak really highly in your favor. I've worked at a couple of institutions, and really the Earlham students, I've seen so much success with students getting into multiple grad programs. So if you're worried, like, come talk to us now. Let's talk about like, how can I be more competitive, and we can take a look at what you've done already and maybe gear up some other things that would look good for you. Okay. Any drawbacks to applying to dual degree programs for your master's? I would say, obviously, if you're doing a dual degree, you're looking at a little bit longer time commitment. That's the obvious thing, because it's going to take you a little bit more. You're generally working with more credit. So while most programs at the master's level might only be a year or two, if you're doing a dual degree, it might take you a little bit longer. There's probably a little bit trickier time when it comes to funding for dual degree programs. I think it just depends on the institution. But yeah, I think the time commit is really probably the biggest thing. And we have several mentions asking for the presentation and the spreadsheet template. We will absolutely, that's why we asked you guys to kind of check in, so that we can make sure we get that to you. So I will send some resources along with the spreadsheet as well. In addition, I think Ebony will take care of the video.
Yes. And like I said throughout, if you have not, please list your first and last name in the chat. There are a few of you who your name isn't coming up. So we would love to give you these resources. Also, this will be available on YouTube. Because we are recording, so keep an eye out for our social media posts. If you have not already, go follow and like our social media pages, the CGCE and the CGH's Facebook and Instagram.
So hopefully this kind of will get you motivated and started in a really non-intimidating way, because we just gave you 3 little things to do. So hopefully this will get you guys started into a good place. We will be announcing the date and time for the second part, which is going to be a little bit more nitty gritty on the things that you probably are dreading already, like the personal statement, in mid-July. In the meantime, remember, our goal is to get those 3 tasks accomplished. If you are struggling with that, need more resources, or just want someone to walk you through it step by step, again, that's what we're here for. So reach out to us. And we will make sure that one of us is able to contact you and sit down for some one-on-one time, because I know, again, there's a lot of information out there. So this was just kind of that first intro. We're happy to make it very specific with you. And then hopefully you guys can all join us again in July, because again, you knock this stuff out of the park now, you're going to be in such solid shape and so chill next semester. Okay, that was corny. I'm done.